Hey folks, it's Jeremy. You're listening to Blammo. How you doing? We did it. We're here. You're here. I'm here. They're here. I don't know. How else am I supposed to do this? But it's a new week. I'm still, I'm not going to lie to you. I always like to record these the night before something goes. But I think this is pre-recorded because, I don't know what, it's like maybe 5 days before this goes. The episode actually goes live. I got to be honest. I got to tell you the truth. It still feels current. It's still current, but I'm still recovering from this jet lag from Japan. I just got back the other night, and dude, this is hard. Jet lag is real. I mean, it was real when I was there, but it feels more real here because I don't have any good stuff to distract me. I don't have any amazing 7-Eleven or incredible coffee or insanely good clothes. Oh God, it was so good. But rest assured, there's definitely some Japan recaps coming up. We got some good pods. Very excited for you all to hear those. They're in the edit bay right now. Yeah, man, I just got to say this. Japan was probably some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. It was great for the pod. It was great for work and business. But man, I am so like not cool. I mean, everyone I saw out there was just stinking cool. And in my head, I think I'm cool, right? Like that's the thing that you tell yourself to kind of get by. You're like, hey, it's all right. You got this. You're cool. I'm out there. I'm like, oh man, I'm throwing punches underwater. I mean, it was great though. This is all in jest. It was a wonderful time. But enough about that. We got David Cho on the pod this week. I tried to say this in his intro when we talked, but David Cho is like, he's an influencer's influencer, I would say, to say the very least. But I mean, he is just, if you're not familiar with him, he's always kind of behind the scenes of everyone's favorite person. And I said this to him that I feel like everyone has a David Cho in their life. But what I didn't realize is that everyone's David Cho is actually David. It's him. He just fills the role. But he's here. He's on the pod. He's kind of been like the foundational building blocks of so many incredible things that we all know and love, from things like Grantland and The Ringer, and he was at College Humor. He was at The All. Just all the things that we know and love. I'm just so glad he came by to chat. Talk about his new app he's been working on. Yes, I said app. It's not really an app though. I got to tell the truth. It's a service. It's a whole site. You'll hear it. We're going to talk about it. But it's just great to hear from the guy because I love and admire him dearly. He's got all the best takes you can ever imagine, and he just keeps your feet on the ground. So very excited for you all to hear, dig into David Cho. Yeah, I mean that's it. We're going to jump right into it. All right, I love y'all. Let's do it. I think we both are wearing the same glasses.
No way. You think?
I don't know. Maybe.
Mine are probably bigger. I'm excited to do this. I've been doing this is my 4th podcast in 4 business days.
Oh no. Are you out of stories? Are you out of...
Well, no. I mean, honestly, it's like everywhere else. It's like when I did How Long Gone, I had to like optimize for that audience. And my true version of self is most consistent with, I think, the Blammo version of me that I will share.
Oh.
I think because the dynamic of our relationship is one where we can kind of talk about anything and it's fine.
Yeah.
But also you've talked up the kindness and earnestness of the Blammo Slack and community so much,
yes,
that it feels truly like a safe space in which I can really just let my me flag fly, as it were.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the only thing I wanted to make sure we explore, I think everyone has a David Cho in their life, but what I didn't realize is that you are the David Cho to everyone.
How are you defining David Cho in this instance?
I think a person who is not seeking the limelight away from the individual they're speaking with, and is like an encourager, like a sounding board.
I think I genuinely, people I'm interested in, I just really like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, even when, like, you and I probably met like 6 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time we met, the first, like, it was 10 minutes of like bullshit small talk. Of just like, we were literally just at a table, like we were like getting a drink with like a group of people. And then like at some point we just like went in.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were just like in a tunnel for like 90 minutes talking about the most like whatever, like everything from like work to family to all of these things in such an intimate way that like, and then like after that, like when we would get, like, I think we ended up getting together like maybe while you were on that trip, like one other time at the Bowery or something like that. And like we had the same version of the conversation, but this time like not with other people around. But I think in general, like I think people who are interesting are so interesting, which sounds very obvious to say. But as a result, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, like how can I help this person in any sort of way is kind of like where my brain goes to. My therapist would say that comes from a very like I need to separate that from the need for validation from people, which I've tried to do, which I think has been helpful, because it's like I used to be like, I want to provide value so that this person likes me. But now it's like I'm now at a place as I've gotten older, I'm just like, I just want to help because like I like this thing existing and I want it to be as good as possible. And I feel very like also passionately about those sorts of things. And so I keep trying to push them as far along as they can go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too spicy too quick, but like how good are you at boundaries? Because that's my new thing that I'm trying to work on. Because I have the same thing.
With regard to this podcast or with regards to people?
No, I would say just in general, like how good is your skill set at protecting yourself? Because that is my Achilles heel, in which I'll fall on my sword to help someone, and without realizing it, I assume that everyone is conscious of either the inconvenience I'm going to help them or the effort or whatever it is. But sometimes when you're around certain types of people, they're oblivious to the sacrifice you're making. So there's never a reciprocation or formality of gratitude, if that's even a thing. And so then you get mad.
I'd never thought about it until you just asked the question, but I am bad at it.
Yeah,
because there are people who have fully taken advantage of it. There are people who have fully like just sort of like been like without any sort of gratitude. But I think for me, it's like, it's never about the gratitude to a certain extent. It's like when it's like, I think as long as it's not like a blatant, like, fuck you of it, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there are people that are like that. Where I'm just like, it's almost shocking. And it's like, you know, when it happens with, if I can, like, I hate to make this like distinction. When it happens with famous people, I'm weirdly more sympathetic to it because they don't know any better. Because if you're really famous, everyone treats you that way. Like I remember the first time I really experienced it where I noticed like, oh, like when someone's famous, like it's only like, it only makes sense that they become an extreme narcissist, because every single interaction you have with every single person is them leaned into a conversation with you being like, oh my God, that's so good. That's the best. Like they're accommodating you so much on every single, like every interaction is someone being like, can I get you a cup of coffee? Like it's that version of discourse.
Yeah.
So then inevitably, I think it's really hard to like actually give a shit about someone else. But the weirder thing is now we live in a society. That's a very
we live in a society.
Now we live in a time where many people think they're famous because our brains aren't equipped to handle like 10,000 people saying they quote unquote like something you did.
Yeah.
Which like it creates this sense of self-importance that like is just really unnecessary. And it's honestly it's something that I think, like you said earlier, like I've never been someone who wants any sort of attention, which is weird because like now I'm having to do, like I'm doing all these podcasts because I have to promote something.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for me. But yeah, like I think like for me, it's like going back to the original boundaries thing. It's like, yeah, it's weird to me that there are so many people now who have become ungrateful for the help that you give, which is very interesting. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting that like that we've lost a sense of like, I don't know, gratitude or something. But then the people who are really grateful, I think, are just great. And like, I think I've been better about keeping those people in and cutting the sort of not grateful people out.
Yeah.
But like, you kind of just have to like, I think I only learned the lesson by like,
getting burnt,
like kind of going. Yeah, it's the only way. It's like, I can only put my hand to the stove. You know, it's like, that's the only way I know how to do it. Because the alternative is you miss out on so many things. And I think for me, a big like life tenet is sort of the idea of like, if something seems doable, you might as well fucking do it. You know, you might as well just like, why not? You know what I mean? Like within reason, obviously, but it's just like, I think professionally, very early on, it became clear to me the only challenge in doing something is your own ability to keep yourself from doing it. It's like everything can kind of get done. And like, I don't know, like you think about, and the more sort of like quote unquote successful or important or whatever people that I interact with, the more I realize we are all on kind of the same spectrum. And the difference between like, I'll take like a corporate example, like the difference between like you and Bob Iger is not that much. It's like the gap between Jeremy to Bob is like kind of the same. You know what I mean? And you see that idea of you like making that sound and turning your head in that way, I think is like a testament to it's actually not that different.
Well, we have the same
what I mean?
core desires, right? You want to be like loved, seen, and heard, but like at the same time.
But even like on an executing level, it's like he's not that much smarter than you. You know what I mean? He just has the ability to sort of have like take Elon Musk, for example, right? I don't know. I don't mean to incite, but like I remember I interacted with Elon like 10 years ago now. I was at a dinner party thrown by some like documentary filmmakers, and I was there with a friend of mine who was invited, and we went, and I was just like, damn, this guy is regular. And this was like post Iron Man 2, pre-Twitter, so he's not he also, I think he was a different person back then, but like he was just like kind of like a nerd guy who, when it comes to like when you think of like what he did that's really successful, he's like, I can build a new car, I can build a tunnel between these cities, I can build a payment. Like he's not doing any of the things. Sure. You know what I mean? It's like, and there are probably some things where it's like there's some level of like irrational confidence that was kind of the superpower that it's like, if you really were like, you know what, I can do this. Like, I think there's so much more you could do. Not in like a Tony Robbins kind of way, but it's just like there's just not that big of a difference between, like you and him. It's like the difference between like us and like Leonardo da Vinci, you know what I mean? I bet it's like really high.
Yeah.
But like, or like Steve Jobs, I'm assuming, because it seems like there are people who operate on such a high level that it's like clear that, like, not to be Kanye West about it, but it's like Da Vinci, Steve Jobs, like Walt Disney. But like there are people that operate on a high level where like that creativity was unmatched. But I think the vast majority of people are kind of on the same spectrum. And it's like really a matter of like, and obviously like Bob is great at being so like organized and diligent and like executing. But I think that comes from a conviction of believing he can do it in some ways. I sound like a real like grind bro, hustle bro sort of like idiot.
Yeah.
But it's not that energy. I swear. I promise you, Blammo listener, that I am not that person. I'm just kind of more like, we're all kind of the same. You know what I mean? It's like, it's something that I think about so much, and it's something that like when you really internalize it, I think you're just like, damn, it's like you doing something is like one part like actually having the conviction to do it, and then two, getting lucky about like whatever you try to do is the thing that makes sense for the world at that moment.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'll buy. I agree with that for sure. I think there's
not the first part.
Well, I think there's certain advantages that different people have, whether it's socioeconomic or all those sorts of things. But yes, in general, we're the same type of person on what we need to survive. And I think oftentimes there's a mystique that gets built up in the world that we're engaging with that makes us view this person as A, B, and C. Like I used to work with X celebrity, and in my head, or like, okay, when I worked at Beggars, there were all these musicians, and in my head, they equaled A, B, and C. And then I got to spend time with them, and I'm like, oh my God, you're just you. Like you and I are the same thing. We still laugh at the same jokes. We all think that whatever, Mel Brooks is funny, and that is more normal than, whatever.
I think when it comes to like very specific skills, there is a gap, right? Like there's a difference between like a song that I can write versus a song that, whatever, Paul McCartney in his prime could write.
Sure.
But like the difference, I love that
you said in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, today it's like I'd wash him, of course. I got 20 years on him. No, but the difference between us and so many people, it's like the difference between us and LeBron, very high. We definitively cannot dunk a basketball. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's like when it comes to so many other things that are like where the majority of our like occupations and the success of like what we do professionally exists, I think it's like that gap is just not that different. It's why you look at like, it's like you look at so many people who try, like even athletes who try to start a podcast, and it's like, oh, that they can't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, because they're like, there's all these like specific things that I think go into like your ability to do something. And, I don't know.
Okay. No, I agree. Well,
do you?
Yeah, I do. I do now. I understand what you're saying. I think it's just the amount of time you want to put into something.
If you were willing to put like, if you tried to actually define what the differences between you and Bob Iger were, I don't think there'd be that many. Genuinely.
Well,
on like a practical,
other than money,
level.
Prestige, connection, I don't know. I mean, I
Kind
bet
of, but,
we
like,
both
on a
think
practical-
Heavyweights was a funny movie.
He also like he's an executive who's famously very creative. Like
Yeah.
has a lot of notes for everyone he works with, which I think is interesting. But it's like you could do that.
Sure.
I don't mean that in like a.
Give my opinion.
It's like, yeah, you decide to buy Marvel, decide to buy Star Wars. It's like, or it's like all these things are it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying.
No, that's fair.
And the gap is not as much as the world would have us believe.
Yes. That being said, let's get into you, Mr.
What are you reading off of?
What am I reading off? To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm not reading off
Do you
of
have
anything.
notes?
I have I keep little fidgets at my desk that
Oh my god.
that basically distract me. One of the things
Big
that I do
What do you think it
is
What do you think it's about our generation that does that?
I don't know. I think it's the fact that we feel that we have to multitask at all times. So like the biggest thing I do is when I start a pod, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I put my, which links to my computer or whatever. And then I have two things at my desk. One is a polishing glove that, because I have my watches over here and other dumb stuff, and I'll like mess around with the glove. And the other is this weird little like mini brush pen clicker thing, and I will mess around with it. And so sometimes when I'm trying to figure out my train of thought, I will open it and close it and look around. But I have no notes. I have bullet points that I read, but like I do not ever try to look at questions while I'm doing a pod, because in most cases, one, we wouldn't have had the exchange we had at the beginning. I would have tried to cut you off and force whatever agenda I had, and then you lose the spontaneity to have a conversation, which some people might find is far more engaging and fulfilling than you saying, I'm from Tennessee and I worked here.
My worst version of that, and I wouldn't do it on a podcast, but I do it on calls all the time, is the iPhone game 2048. Do you know it?
No.
It looks like this. It's like essentially like you swiping numbers back and forth and like trying to get scores. Like I will do that all day long on work calls, especially if they're not Zoom or they can't see me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I just need my brain to be doing like something that requires 5% of it at any given moment, because our brains are broken. That's why I asked like
I agree.
What the thing was. It's crazy. It's insane. Like I can't wait till like people really start dissecting our brains.
I think we're going to be screwed, because I realized at one point that, so I went to the gym before we were chatting, and I was reading an article. I am finishing this other book, and so I'm reading an article about the book and the person that I was, reading about. So then I walk into the gym. I have my head down in my phone. I get on. I put my stuff in my locker. I get on the elliptical. I then pull out an iPad so I can watch the show that I'm watching, which is unrelated to the book that I've been reading. And then while I'm watching the show, I stop and I'm like, hey, I wonder if whatever. And I stop the show and I pull out my phone now, another screen. And now there's a screen on. I have a screen in my hand. And then there's the screen that's on the elliptical in front of me, which is playing, I don't know, some like Masters highlights. And I'm trying to read to figure this stuff out. And then I realize I left the gym. I don't know a single person. I can't recall a single person that I saw in the gym. I don't know who checked me into the gym. I know that I washed my hands and went to the bathroom, sort of thing. But like and I was like, oh my God, I'm so fucking disconnected from reality, because I built this reality digitally, and I'm so laser focused, for better and for worse, on finishing this stupid book and figuring out whatever take I can make so I can have a conversation with a person who vehemently disagrees about this individual that I'm reading about. And I was like, I'm so broken. I'm so broken. I can't engage with right now what's happening with me.
How much silence can you deal with in your life? Like for me, it's like, especially because I live alone, I'm able to like fill every gap of silence with like podcast, music, whatever. It's like I can have something else going at all times. Like, and I realize when I actually turn stuff off, like how much my thoughts like want to like occupy that space, but I'm just like drowning them out with like fucking two guys talking about the NBA. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like
I don't think I can deal with much silence, because on the way back, I'm leaving the gym. I go to get a coffee. I leave to get the coffee, or I'm back in the car. I spilled my coffee on myself, and because I'm an idiot. And they put those stupid fucking lids on the top of the lid, but it was at the wrong angle. And so when I drank it, the coffee spills out on me, and it spills in my lap.
While you're driving?
Yeah, and I keep my car incredibly clean. My car is so fucking clean. You can't tell the difference between a brand new car at the dealership and the car of mine.
Can I ask what car you have? I'm actually genuinely curious.
I have a Kia Telluride.
Nice.
Yeah,
but it's super clean. It smells like new car, or it smells like old car.
It smells like new car. I don't have a scent,
insane.
but I just keep it so clean. There's no other scent that can conflict with the scent that was in there. So there's a remnant of that, and and I have 2 car seats in there, and it's still laser clean. I have a little vacuum cleaner. I keep my car so fucking clean.
How often are we vacuuming the car?
Every couple days. But I have a
every couple of days.
Yeah, I have
That's wild.
a very strict no food policy in my car.
What if they need snacks?
Well, if we're on a road trip and we're going to see family somewhere else, yeah, they can have snacks. But like otherwise, no. Dad's car, dad's rules. That's it. And I've never ever enforced that. But here we are. So I spilled it.
If you imprint the rule early enough, they'll have no idea that an alternative ever could exist.
Well, they do because they ride in their mom's car.
Oh, and she's like, all snacks go?
I think it's not as much of a priority for her as it is for me. And I'm not throwing her under the bus or anything, but like
every other day
different.
Vacuuming is true.
But mine comes
it's a real commitment to the cause.
It comes from control and weird OCD and all sorts of things that I just feel like control, right?
An illusion, a fallacy.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Wait a second. I got to get my bids in on the Bezel app, but more on that in a minute. I get all sorts of emails and questions from you all, which I love to read and respond. And one thing I constantly get, and even read in the Blamo Slack, is what watch should I buy and where should I get it? It's a wild world out there with all sorts of websites and shops, but I go to Bezel. Bezel is the trusted marketplace for buying and selling your next luxury watch with expert in-house authentication on every purchase. First off, folks, it's getbezel.com. That's getbezel.com. But I use and recommend Bezel because it's the best of both worlds. You can go to the site and browse a marketplace of luxury watches, over 16,000 of them, by the way, which is a lot. And I know that Bezel is going to authenticate your purchase. Or you can create an account and get connected with your own private client advisor, called the concierge. Because look, making a watch purchase can be confusing, especially when you don't know all the reference numbers. When was this made? Did they use ceramic then? Is it a triple lop, dingle top? What the heck? I don't even know. But they do at Bezel, and they're here to help. Concierge, baby. Look, if looking for your watch to mark a special occasion, or maybe you're just doing research, right? They even have their own journal where you can learn all the ins and outs about Bezel and the brands and all the stuff that's happening right now. But back to my bids. Yes, Bezel now has auctions, and not just any auctions. They got Rolex, they got Cartier, they got Audemars Piguet, all the big dogs and more. So you can discover, bid, and know the Bezel team has got your back with verified in-house authentication. So visit getbezel.com on your smartphone or computer. Bezel, the trusted marketplace for buying or selling your next luxury watch.
It's crazy how much we pursue control considering it can never be achieved. It's maybe the dumbest human thing of all time.
Yeah. And on the way back, I was like, I'm getting notifications because you were asking about silence. I'm getting all these notifications. My audiobook is back on. Then the car in front of me is driving like an idiot, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm also Mr. Super Safe driver. I drive like a grandma that drives the speed limit. Like
the speed limit. You won't go 5 over.
Occasionally, but like otherwise, I'm just like, what? What's the deal? What's the point? Like, I'm not in that big of a rush. If the difference between driving like 5 miles or 10 miles over a speed limit is really not that much time you're saving.
It's a really satisfying feeling when you're on the freeway and like you see a guy or you see a person like going like weaving, like being a complete sociopath. And like 5 minutes later, you guys are in the same spot. You know what I mean? Because like they hit the same wall that everyone was eventually going to hit.
Yeah.
And like that much movement, it's like it requires a lot of like luck to make the right decisions at every given point to end up at a place where you're actually getting there in a meaningful amount faster than you would otherwise.
It's absurd. So I did that. Then I spilled this, and then I'm like, I can't even focus. I can't think. And I finally reached over, pressed the little power button on the infotainment screen, and I was like, I'm just gonna have silence on the way home. It was stupid.
It's one of those things. Like I've gotten so used to music playing when I'm like walking around the city or something like that, that when the other day, like 2 days ago, my AirPods gave out for some reason, and like I was like just forced to be with myself.
Yeah,
and it's like you have so many thoughts that really do like warrant good attention, that like it's crazy how much like we've been able to like create worlds where we can be distracted from it. It's like I honestly have not. This is not a thought that I've had before we recorded this podcast, but like it is so like it is wild to think about like how much we can actually do when we're not allowing ourselves to like, you know. I sound like such a like I'm not this like hippy dippy of a person. I think you bring this out of me.
I'm sorry.
Because it's like, well, because I don't think blaming you specifically. I don't think I've ever like. Yeah, this is not a place that my brain normally goes to, and like it's funny. It's like the version of me on How Long Gone is very different than.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I pre-gamed and listened to that like last night, and I was just
someone asked me if they should listen. I was like, honestly, if you don't like what they do, it's like you shouldn't, because I'm like really like I'm just like I slip into my mode with them, which is very different than, you know, how we communicate. Also different than how Chris and I would communicate one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love Chris and Jason. I think they're geniuses. I think they're brilliant at what they're doing. I applaud everything they've done with How Long Gone. It's so much for me that I'm unable to interact with all of it. And so, you know, but this is just how people listen and interact with media now. I mean, we can talk about media and your history with that, where it's like now it's just a person that you carry with you at all times, and you get to, you know, like control.
No, it's your on-demand loneliness killer. Yeah, without a doubt.
It is.
Like it's fully everything about our phones are essentially just like in the same way, like the most explicit thing being like you're at a party, you don't know anyone, got to pull out the phone.
Yeah,
got it. Like I have to feel like someone sees me somewhere.
Yeah,
you know, and it's like it's like a place I go to all the time. It's like the interesting thing with podcasts, and I it's something that I've experienced firsthand a lot, where it's like there are podcasts that I really like now that are like 10 years old that are in English but have a vernacular that I'm so unfamiliar with. And so I can't get like, if you like there's a movie podcast that I like a lot called Blank Check. And so I'm like, I've become like friendly with Sims. And like, I remember like 3 years ago, the first time I heard it, I was like, what the fuck is this gibberish? Because I could understand all the words they were saying, but I could not follow the conversation. And I gave it a listen and I had to give it up.
Oh.
And then like a year ago, I fell back into it, like, because I was like, I really just needed to hear someone talk about Tenet or something. And or Howl's Moving Castle or something.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that one.
And so, but like, and then I finally got into it, and now I'm like obsessed. You know what I mean? And now like I'm fully like blanky, like all of that shit. But like at the beginning, it's like so funny how like there's so many things that rely. I think How Long Gone is similar. It's like they've done 600 episodes. There is a shorthand in how they communicate on the show that is very specific to them. Yeah. That if like anyone, if that was someone's first entree into one of their guests or even them, it's such a not misrepresentation, but such a bad entry point for almost anyone. You know what I mean? Because it's like, unless you're a regular listener to the show, because it's like you can't really discern who a person is because they've entered this like weird, like, you know, vortex of communication that exists for any podcast that's existed for that long. Because there's so many in-jokes, there's so many like references, there's so many like passive, subconscious ways of communication that are just like wild.
It's crazy. Well,
were you able to make it through the episode?
Oh yeah, I heard the entire thing. Yeah.
It's all right.
Wait.
It's cool.
I mean, I don't ever really grade or critique podcasts. I think there's just different shows where it's like, oh, I want to listen to this so I can feel like I know about these restaurants and this aspect of like, you know, aspirational culture. And then other stuff I'll listen to so I can like feel like I'm learning something else. Like I listen to The Rest is History at times to like brush up on certain stuff. But I genuinely had to take like I recognize the irony, a break from podcasts for a bit because there were so many books that I was trying to read and I was running out of time, like in the, you know, in the little goal I'd set myself to read these books, that I've just like jump into audiobooks. But then I also love music, and I'm like, do
you like an audiobook more than a physical, like a reading book?
I basically
like reading it.
Well, it depends. So like I read books. And I've said this before, so apologies, but like I've read books in the sense that I'll buy the book, like the Kindle book. I'll buy the physical book if I really like it, and then I'll buy the audiobook. So I'll buy it 3 times, which I recognize is dumb, but I don't really care. And so I'll start
Definitely
reading
dumb.
it on a Kindle, and then when I'm, you know, done at night or whatever, the next day I'll pick up where I left off because they sync on an audiobook. And then I'll go for a walk in the morning or I'll do whatever, and I'm listening to the audiobook. And then, you know, maybe later I might grab my Kindle or something again, and that picks up from where the audiobook was. And so, you know, I just kind of basically, if I want to buy a book, it's like $45 because I'm buying it 3 times, which is fine. But yeah,
I feel like sometimes with audiobooks, maybe because I associate them too much with podcasts, I don't retain the same amount of information.
Well, it's true.
As when I'm reading by like hand.
Yeah, I stop and rewind all the time. Like, especially, you know, when things I'm like, wait, they meant what? Into which, and I'll bookmark it. And then later when I will read it on a Kindle, I'll find my bookmarks and I'll start and reread those things to make sure I have the context correctly. I think it's just because like I didn't have this like formal study training. So I've kind of built my own ad hoc mentality.
In what? In reading?
And just like, I don't know, in like a higher education of like learning how to learn better. And so I just consume as much as possible and then dissect.
Who do you think is a person that had a formal like education on like consumption?
I don't know. Isaac Newton or something.
Oh yeah, of course, Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about him. I don't know. I think it's like we're all kind of like, it's the same way. It's like no one really ever teaches you how to shower. You know what I mean? It's like everyone kind of showers differently. Like, and there's no like, I don't think there is like there's no right way to shower. And like, it's like why, like when like you see like little things on the internet where it's like, do people wash their legs when they shower? Like becomes like a whatever thing on Twitter. It's just like, no one actually knows. Like, it's like, there's not a consistent instruction for so many things that we do. It's just like, oh yeah, this is kind of what you do because of factors X, Y, Z, A, B, C.
Yeah. That's true. Well, let's get into your shit here. So
yeah, let's get into it.
You grew up in Tennessee, correct?
I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Were you born there?
No, I was born in North Carolina, and then we moved to Portland, Oregon for a year when I was in first grade, and then we moved to Knoxville when I was in second grade, and then I lived there until I went to college.
Why'd you move so much?
I don't know. I mean, it's like I think my parents were just like very poor immigrants who weren't. I think the generation that my parents are a part of, I think, especially immigrants, but I think everyone just kind of was like, well, we got to do what we got to do to get by. You know what I mean? I don't think there was ever any like preference for, oh, this would be a better way to live our life, or this is an outcome that I want. Like, there's no goal. You know what I mean? There's like, yeah, hardship is part of life. Mm-hmm. So I just have to do whatever I have to do. And that's kind of what they did. It's like, I don't think they ever thought, oh, well, what we actually want is this objective or that objective. I think they just kind of did it. And so my dad at the time was a minister similar to yours. Mm-hmm. And he moved. It's like, I don't even know how you would go about, because he's a Korean person and he was a pastor for Korean people. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't know how a church in Knoxville, Tennessee somehow finds my dad in Portland, Oregon, is like, oh, come be a pastor at this church, which has genuinely maybe 40 to 50 people, and kind of like stayed at that number my entire life, like as long as he was like working at that church. And it's just like, how would that even, like, I don't know the steps, like the logistical steps for that to occur in a pre-internet, like, I'm sure there's some sort of like, I'm sure there's like a ZipRecruiter for pastors now that exists. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I have no idea.
I bet there's got to be. Like, I'm sure something like that is. But like at the time, like, I don't know how they were finding each other. Information was so hard to share. Where they like like, not joking, mailing letters back and forth. It's like, this is like pre-fax. So I don't know, like we did that. And then, we were in Knoxville from when I was 7 until college.
So you go to school where?
At Wake Forest in North Carolina.
Whoa!
As a product. Yeah. So like that was because they gave me the most money. They gave me a full ride, which was great. But like, again, like, it's funny. It's like Wake Forest was such a decision I didn't really give a shit about. Like I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like I have no money.
Now
so
or
I don't,
then?
Back then, it was one where it's like they were the only school that offered me a full ride.
Oh, bummer.
And the rest of the schools I got into were all like, yeah, like come pay $100,000 to go to school here. Well, yeah, I mean it's like big, like whatever. I guess in parentheses, Ivy League schools.
Yeah, okay.
Like, yeah, like you're broke, but like that we can only give you so much.
Yeah.
And you're not smart. You're not that smart. You're very broke, but smart enough to get in, not smart enough to get like crazy money. And so Wake gave me everything. And so I went there. But like my entire career was set off by Wake, because my first day when I got to college, on our hall at the time, Wake Forest, this is in 2001, was like all the students got laptops, like got IBM ThinkPads, which is like a very big deal in 2001.
Trackpad in the middle of the keyboard ThinkPad?
Yeah, but I was a red dot guy, which I think is really great. And I still forever am, if I were to ever use a ThinkPad again. But like, because of that, every building had 4 RTAs, which are resident technical advisors. Mm-hmm. My RTA lived on my hall. I ended up being this guy, Ricky Van Veen, who offered me my first job out of school, which is because he had started College Humor the year before. And so if I don't go to Wake, which is like a lark of a decision, aside from the friendships and whatever that I have, like that I appreciate a lot, I never would have worked at College Humor. If I hadn't worked at College Humor, we never would have done all of the things that we did there, that then gave me the mentality that I started at the beginning talking about, like, you literally can do anything. It's like we made Vimeo was a product of at the time.
Well, hold on. People don't know what these are. So how long do you go? You go to school. You end up working at College Humor.
Yeah. So I'm like the 5th or 6th employee, like real employee at College Humor.
Okay.
Or like, I guess the second employee besides the founding partners. And like, I had an offer at the time to go work at GQ as an ed assistant for 22 grand. Or I could go work at College Humor for 40 grand.
Man, you dodged a bullet.
I mean, I don't know. It's like I kind of ended up at the same place, to be honest.
Sure.
But like, so like I ended up going to work at College Humor because at the time they had started a funny t-shirt company because they were like, and this is like, again, like it's informed sort of everything we said, where like they had started College Humor. One of their biggest advertising sort of resources were funny t-shirt brands. Yeah. And they were like, what if we made our own funny t-shirts? Would the margin on that be higher than if we allow these funny t-shirt brands to just sort of advertise? And so we just like, they figured out how to make funny t-shirts. And then I figured out, okay, well, how do I turn this into a real business? And like, they like, literally, it was the dumbest, like I was 22. They were like, okay, if you sell 200 grand worth of t-shirts this month, we'll buy you a new pair of sneakers, sort of thing. And so I like figured out how to do it, and I did it. And like,
what sneakers
I got
did
a pair
you get?
of, honestly, they're the dumbest. Like, I mean, this is like, again, 2005, so it's like very early sneaker culture, but they were like dumb high top Air Force Ones that were like a Rasheed Wallace version that have like a gray swoosh, not shiny, and it's just like but it's like I was coming from a place of never had knew anything. You know, we were so poor that I could never buy anything. You know, it's like that's like the mindset that I was coming from. So I was like, okay, I'll do that all day. And so, but yeah, so it's like we go to College Humor, and then I guess like then it starts growing. Like College Humor starts growing really quickly.
Huge.
So it's like, well, like it's like, so like Jake and Amir, like Amir from Jake and Amir was my roommate at the time. We lived together for like 3 years, but like we also like, so video streaming capabilities start then. So it's like video transcoding becomes a thing. And so then our engineers are really smart. And they're like, oh, let's turn this into a community. Like, let's allow video uploading to be a community. And all of us were like, I don't know if that makes sense. That's stupid. This is pre-YouTube, pre-anything. We're like, I don't know. Like, let's just focus on College Humor. Like, that's doing so well. But like, they were right. And you sort of see how like 3 people with an idea like can kind of make this thing that at the time was like Vimeo was like rivaling YouTube and all these things. It's like, I don't know. It's like you saw people being able to do anything. And again, like going back to the original thing, it's like, I don't think those people are that different than, you know, anyone else. You know, it's like we met like our first revenue person at College Humor, or the original sort of one of the original ad sales guys, ended up being Facebook's first ad salesperson because the world was so small back then. This was in 2004. And so this guy, Kevin, like I remember it was in our new office. So it probably was 2006. Like he brings around Mark Zuckerberg and he's like, hey, like meet these guys, whatever. And you sit in a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg, and you're like, damn, this guy's smart, but he's like, not like, it's like he has conviction and he has like ideas that are really like game changing, but it's like everyone has like ideas. You know what I mean? He's able to execute on that in like a very, very specific way that's like changed the internet forever. But it's like you meet him, he's like very wet hands and like isn't able to talk to you. You know what I mean? It's just like a very specific experience. But like, I don't know. Yeah. So then we do College Humor, which is fun. And then that sells to IAC. Yep. And then I have to work at IAC for a certain amount of time to whatever. And then I went to go work at Radar because I liked magazines.
Oh my God. Radar was the fucking best.
I mean, it was like, again, it's like the Radar tree is really good. It's like, you know, like our editors were like Willa Paskin, who now has a very successful podcast called Decoder Ring. You know, like everyone that was there, like it was like, is someone that like would do really interesting things. And, you know, it's like we did that. And then we had hired a couple of Gawker writers at the time to be our digital. So I oversaw like the digital piece of Radar, which like at the time they would let a 25-year-old like be like, you can be in charge of a section, but that section is the internet because no one respected the internet. So like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want. And so we hired like Alex Balk and then Corey Sika, or maybe we hired Corey first, but like we hired them from Gawker to sort of oversee our digital. And then while that was happening, at some point someone was like, what if we just spun off? What if we started our own thing and didn't do this with Radar? And again, like I'm like 25 or 26. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, let's think about it. But then that plan got accelerated because in October of 2007 or 8, Radar folds because of the economic crisis, and it was owned by I want to say Jesse Jackson's son or something.
Okay.
Yusef Jackson.
Sure.
And then they sell to AMI. It becomes like a tabloid thing, which I think it probably still exists as. And So we were like, okay, I guess we should start this now. And then that's how we started The All. So which was like a very like small media darlingy like blog, frankly. And we started that on April 20th of whatever year, 2009 or something like that. And then, then that became sort of a thing where it's like, oh, well, we can figure out a way to have writers make money and, we can give them ad support, operational support, and we can like launch additional verticals. So we launched a women's one called The Hairpin with Edith Zimmerman. We had, a friend of mine, Adam Frucci, who's launched like a comedy version called Splitsider, which eventually got sold to New York Mag. And then the last one I did was probably the most successful one, which was Intel had come to us being like, here's 300 grand to, we just like, we need some sort of editorial property. Like, what can you build in technology? And Adam at the time was also freelancing for Gizmodo, which was being edited by Brian Lamb.
Is this pre or post AOL purchase of Gizmodo?
It must have been,
I guess maybe
pre.
Or no? Okay.
I think so, because it was still Gawker.
Okay.
It was still technically Gawker.
Right.
And so then when that happened, Brian was super burnt out on tech. And I was like, Brian, here are some tech ideas. Would any of these be of interest to you? And he was like, well, I really want to start this blog about the ocean. And I was like, okay. He was like, can you help me do that? And I went through the pitch memo and I was like, okay, this sounds more kind of like a Tumblr than a business, but I think you should do it because it's fun. But what about this like new consumer reports for, the millennials or whatever? And that became the Wirecutter. And so then that was the last one like I started. And then right when that was happening was when Bill Simmons had called me, who I was a massive fan of. And, like he reached out because we'd had like the All had been featured in the Times. Like
the All was a huge deal. I remember everyone at Beggars
I don't
talking
think that's true though, because our numbers were so small.
Okay, so here we go. Let's dive into this real quick. And I think there's a very interesting perception of what success means when certain, I don't know, calibers of individual are obsessed with it. So it sounds like, because you're like, well, our numbers weren't X. We weren't this level of saturation. But all of these tastemakers and influencers, what we would say now, all these sorts of like personalities loved The All. People, I mean, were you pitching yourself to get written about from all these different, publications, or did that just happen because The All was so good?
Well, when you no, I think it's a different thing. It's like when you write for media people, inherently they talk about it like it's important because they need to validate the thing that they're consuming is important,
or they're jealous and envious or obsessed with it, which maybe all of the
either
above.
or. But little from column A, little from column B.
Sure.
You know what? Actually, the craziest version of someone who's obsessed with The All is one Thanksgiving, it was like early because I don't think we were making like real money yet. One Thanksgiving, Ryan Adams was a massive fan of Bulk, and he was with Mandy Moore at the time, and they brought over pies to Corey's apartment where they were working out of at St. Mark's. And then I think they cleaned the apartment because Corey's apartment was like, there's something weird where they're like, how can we, like, let's hang out, whatever. And they started tidying things up. It was a very weird situation.
Wow.
But I remember like, why are Ryan Adams and Mandy Moore of Candy here cleaning out Corey's apartment at St. Mark's with his cats and whatever? But no, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe like now people would appreciate it more. Back then it was just like my metric was just like, okay, will people give us money for ads? Can we get into this thing to cover this event, or can we get into that thing to cover that event? And back then it was like volume and scale had so much to do with the way people value things. Whereas like now it's like, you see like a Substack can get really popular because of a column, or like something can go viral in a way. It's like, this is like, it's during the Twitter era, but it's like Twitter started in 2007 and this is like 2009. So it's like, it's before like the ubiquity of real like independent media in that version where it gets like a nice, like, it's so funny because like I'll see like Times write-ups about like, website X, Y, or Z that started like by, random 20-year-olds. And I'm like, damn, we never got this kind of coverage. You know what I mean? It's like getting the when we got like the car thing, I remember that was like Carr loved Corey. And he was like, I want to write about this thing. And it's funny. It's like, he kind of negs me in the story. Cause it's like, I was like 27, it's like, he didn't like, he had very little respect for me, even though like I would like had started this thing with these guys. And he was just like, I forget what it is. I think he calls me a cog in a machine. And I was like, damn.
Jeez.
But he's like, he was so good. It's just kind of like, you're like, yeah, whatever. Right. Whatever I mean, I was happy to be like, I have it somewhere. It's like, we were in the front page of like the business section of like, this is this thing. And it was like, for me as like a kid, it was like such an important moment.
So So
You read it?
I read the all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a
Really?
lot of it was also because I didn't know what it was at first. And
You didn't live here at the time, right?
no, I did. I moved to New York in
Oh, you did?
04, 05. But I was at Beggars. I started at Beggars Group in 08, late 07 or 08, something like that. Because the iPhone had just come out. I'm trying to remember. Whatever. And
Wild way for us to keep track.
I know, it's so
the
bad.
iPhone 1 had come out.
yeah. And there was kind of like, there's no company Slack or anything like that. It's just you email.
There's not even iMessage on your phone.
No.
There's nothing. You have GChat probably.
We had Jabber.
Oh wow.
Which was the iMessage looking or iChat version or Bonjour instant messaging or whatever it was. So everyone that was on the same network basically could chat with each other. But we still used mailing lists, and there was a mailing address, which I won't say because I think it's still active, and it went to the entire staff. And so whenever you wanted to like send articles or whatever, and so someone sent this thing like, oh, this is the all, or this is and I think in a marketing meeting, it might have been Adam Farrell, who's now at Loma Vista, and they were just talking about like different, hot darling publications and publishing companies that, how can we like sink our teeth into this, or how can we leverage whatever artist or Vampire Weekend or whatever it is at the time to get, engagement, or what would a takeover? Everything was always takeover. What would a takeover look like?
But so many takeovers.
But anyway, so you go to Wirecutter, it gets sold.
No, we started the Wirecutter.
You started the Wirecutter. Jeez.
And then I left to go work with Bill because like
at
Bill
Grantland,
called me.
This is
at
pre-Grantland.
Grantland. Yeah, this is ESPN Disney.
Yeah.
Bill. And so Bill was starting his own thing. I think to get me in the door, they had to give me the title of something editor, which is very funny because like Disney has like very specific structures for
compensation
groups. And like, and compensation, all that stuff. And so I remember I had to like quote unquote edit something. And it was so funny because like I would write sponsored content for the all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's like if a brand needed like Nissan needs like something about life hacks, I was like, okay, I guess I'm writing about a cast iron skillet or something like that. And it's just like, and it's like I would cover parties for the all because I just like wanted to go to certain things like, oh, Jay-Z's performing at this Nike thing. I need like a way in to do this thing. And so whatever. And so like I had to pass like an edit test, which I remember was very, very funny. And like it's like I needed like John Walsh to like approve my writing. I needed like John Skipper was like my last interview. But yeah, so I had to move to LA to go work with Bill. This is 11, I think, at this point, 2011. And I remember he called me on Cinco de Mayo, and I remember I was listening to like I was listening to his podcast on my computer, but it was an episode where he had called in from his phone.
Oh.
And so I was like hearing him on a phone voice, and then I was hearing him talk to me. It was the biggest mind fuck of all time. Cause it's kind of like this weird, like fourth wall breaking thing where it's like, you're used to hearing something, talking to Sal or whoever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hear it addressing you. And you're like, what is this? And then I moved to LA to do that. And then I worked on all things Bill at that point. And then at some point we wanted to bring Nate Silver into the Grantland fold. That turned into him getting his own project, which was 538. And so I recruited Nate to do 538. I was the founding publisher of that one as well. And then, I was doing like 30 for 30 stuff at the time because that was Bill's stuff. And so, that was whatever, that was fun. And then, when Bill left ESPN, like there was like a real conversation of like, does it make sense for me to go with Bill and do the Ringer? But I think at that point, like, working with talent is hard, just on like a human level of like, it's a very specific thing that they need. And I don't know if that was something I wanted to do like that. And then also I just wanted to move back to New York. Frankly. Right. And it was just like, I was so sick of being in LA. And like, even though I was coming back like once a month, it was just like not enough. It's like, being in LA is such a, like, you have to really like that life. And I think it helps if you have like a family or something like that, but I just didn't. So it made more sense for me to come back to New York. But that was like a fun time. And then I moved back and was just doing a ton of consulting, right? It's like tons of people had always been like, oh, do you want to do like, work for an ad agency? Because like at the time was when so many people knew had ad agencies.
Yeah.
There's so many creative agencies. They're like, oh, if you ever want to work on something, let us know. And so then you could just like pick projects that were interesting. It's like, I remember I did this like comms thing for Nike because they're doing like 2025 planning for Mark Parker. And it was just like, like the guy who was doing it was Korean and we really got along. And so like I was like they're presenting in Dubai, which is like the most like 2017 Nike thing they could ever do. Where it's like, and I remember my entire deck was built off the premise of Boyhood.
Oh,
the movie.
yeah.
And I was like, Nike exists the way the camera in Boyhood does, where it should be checking in with this person every single year across their journey. And their journey with the brand should be like the journey of the camera and the boy. And that was like the entire pitch of like the way like, God, I remember
Checks
so much
out.
where it was like, well, they're like, I was like, you know, you don't buy Jordans because Michael Jordan was good at basketball. You buy Jordans because you love Michael Jordan. And I was like, you need to create a relationship between the athletes and the person in a more intimate way. And this is like, that was like kind of the premise of it. I was like, how can Nike be the facilitator of that relationship, essentially? How can Nike be the platform between the two people? But like, you just do shit like that. And then also, I think at the time, and this goes to what we were talking about before of like the wanting to just like help people and do things, was like, I think while I was at ESPN, like Aziz was like Aziz and I had gotten close because of the College Humor stuff.
Aziz and sorry.
For folks, and
sorry.
And we're sorry.
No,
that's a massive asshole thing. I'm sorry to the
No, you're fine.
Pure Blammo listeners. Aziz and I became friends because we all used to watch Lost together, and then a very specific time of like, it's like, yeah,
that was must-see TV era, but that wasn't called must-see TV.
Also, it's like there weren't ways to communicate about these things on the internet, like in a real way. So you like, had to watch with other people so you could talk about the fucking hatch or the numbers or whatever. Yeah. And so I think at the time when I was at ESPN, he wanted to sell his specials direct to consumer because he had heard Louis was going to do that. And so I had like facilitated that. So I was like, okay, here's how we can do it. And we can do it by doing, like I brought in some Vimeo engineers, like whatever, like we started this like whole thing about it. And so I just gotten into the habit of whenever someone I knew of that was doing something that I was interested in, I would just help them figure out how to do it. Right. So it's like with Aziz, like then we went on to being like we just did a bunch of marketing stuff with him where he was like doing an arena tour and we needed to figure out, he was like, okay, well, what's the most important data point that we can know about someone? And we were like, the phone number, because the lock screen is the hardest thing to crack. Email was like overwhelmed at that point, and you know, you couldn't like, no marketing emails were going through. So we were like, okay, how can we get people's phone numbers? And we said, well, what if we only offer them something if they give us the phone number? And so then for his arena tour, like he did a small college tour before that where he went to a bunch of the different cities he was doing for the arena tour. And then we did pop-ups in those cities. And so he said, okay, if you want to come to a pop-up, the tickets are $5, but you have to give us your phone number. And we do them at UCB or whatever. You go to any given city, especially at the time, because he was like so like on fire. It was like we would go to a city, we get 20,000 phone numbers like in one day, like in whatever. And then we would then use that when we went back for the arena tour and sell tickets that way. So then, and then we like, I mean, this shit was really fun because you could kind of just do anything. But like for when he was doing Madison Square Garden, they were like, okay, what if we add 2 shows? Well, what if we had a second show for each night? And we were like, okay, let's figure out how we can sell those. And so it like sells like maybe like 20% with just like like original, like a normal thing. But then we were like, okay, well, what if we give away, like, okay, let's say we're going to give away 10 free tickets front row to whatever show you want, but you have to enter this lottery to do it. And so we do that. We get like 40,000 emails or 40,000 phone numbers. And then 10 people win or 5 people win or whatever. And then 39,995 people get a text being like, hey, sorry you didn't win, but here's a 15% off code, which is the same amount as the marketing overhead. And so we just give them that code and it sells out like in 2 hours. It's so fun. Like, it's like, that's the kind of shit where it's just like fun to do. You know what I mean? Just like figuring out like a puzzle, essentially.
How are you being fulfilled in this time? Because it sounds like, again, you know...
What do you mean fulfilled?
Well,
define fulfilled.
I would
like
say...
compensated money-wise?
No, not compensated, or else I would have said that. But like, I think, you know, so much of your career from the beginning to now is carrying someone else's dream, it sounds like.
I don't know. I think they're all like, for me, it's just like, I like solving problems, right? It's like, you know, there's nothing, I think I was fulfilled because I was having fun, right? Like, it's like figuring out something is fun to me. Like, and I think at the time, I don't think there wasn't anything in particular that I really wanted. It's like building Grantland was fun. You know, it's like I wanted to build a place where writers could have interesting conversations about sports or about pop culture. Like building out that podcast was like fun. It's like figuring out how to do that, figuring out how to build that video. It's like those things, like I like that. Like I feel like the last few years of ESPN was like when Ezra was doing the OJ doc, and like there's all these things where it's like it's just fun to do. So I think that's how it was fulfilling. You know, it's like because Aziz and I were so close, and this wasn't why, but like we developed like a tight-knit group of like 6 or 7 friends. We're just like all hanging out all the time. And then like, so then when the call comes, like come through to the Mercer to listen to Watch the Throne or something like that, you can just like go. And like, I don't know, when you're 28, that's like everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I don't know. I think like for me, it's just like, I liked seeing how things were made. I liked figuring things out. Like I've forever been like someone who just like, if there's like a behind the scenes featurette about anything, like I am consuming that. You know what I mean? Like
You
I probably
watch
watch
the
like
DVD extras.
commentaries, my favorite thing. 'Cause
Really?
especially back, of course, because like back then, it's like people didn't know what they were saying was being consumed. They thought it was like there was never any accountability for anything they said. So like they would just say what their actual thoughts were about why they were making something or how they were making something. It's like there's like this, the Denis Villeneuve just did a thing where he like breaks down like the how he did the sandworm scene in Dune 2, and he like breaks down like the gimbal that they used and like the way they shot it and like all that stuff. I'm like, this is fucking incredible. Like I remember like I've probably watched 45 minutes of a breakdown of the first conversation between Mark Zuckerberg and Rooney Mara in Social Network, like specifically breaking down like the angles that they use and then why they keep switching out from like a wide to like a close. Like it's just, I like knowing stuff like that's just like interesting. So I guess fulfillment to me is just like knowledge. It's like, how do you get information on like how things are done and how things work? And I think, I don't know, it's like, I think curiosity being filled is what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense. I think I don't know many people who could have the career and career trajectory that you were on that weren't or didn't wrestle with some form of envy that like, well, okay, because I'll say this: when you're this close to these people who have larger brand cash power, whatever you want to say to fill that in, I think sometimes it becomes a little bit frustrating that you're not in that position. And so people look to try to find ways to either put themselves in charge of that. And I'm not trying to project to you, but I'm just saying.
Oh, I don't think I have that gene though. Like I remember like we did at College Humor, we did a video one time that was called a lip dub of Flagpole Sitta.
Harvey Danger.
Yeah, Harvey Danger. I was there and I was like, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just not, there's literally probably 50 people in the video. I was like, I'm not doing this. I was the only person who wasn't in it, to the point where it was like, it was parodied in The Office and like all that. It's like, yeah, this just isn't for me. It's like, there's no part of me that wants any sort of attention like that. Like like even doing this shit right now, like I've never talked about this. I've never done this version of a conversation because I'm just like, to what end? What am I getting out of this? You know what I mean? It's like the thing I want is like, I want, like when you and I met and we got along, I was like, oh, I want Jeremy to respect me. Like that's of interest to me. You know what I mean? Like as I've met different people throughout my career, like there are people where I'm like, this person's respect matters to me. It's like random person, what they think about me. It's like, they don't know shit about me specifically. Like they don't actually have real context. It's like, who cares what they think? Like, what is the upside of this? Like, as long as like I'm making money and I can do the things I want to do and I can move the way I want to move, it's like, there's no like that. Now that attitude has fucked me on the most recent project, because there was a long time where there were people who,
this project,
I curried the postcard stuff that I've been working on, it's like, if I curried the favor of different venture people who I hated for so long, like then I would have been in a better position, because I like every business I'd ever started was always bootstrapped. It never had any financing. And so like this time when I had to like fundraise, like I was so bad at it the first time I tried to do it, because I was like, I've always held all of these people in contempt, and now I have to like kind of like dance for them a bit and be like, oh my God, you're so smart. No, I love it. Like, it's so true. Like, blah, 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 blah. And
you're
like,
so much like Bob Iger.
You're like the Bob Iger of venture. Like, that's so cool that you've been able to do that. I love all the operational support. Like, I want to work with real builders, and that's what you are. It's like that kind of bullshit. And I couldn't do it. And like, you know, cause this new thing, it's like, so the gap between ESPN and Postcard was essentially filled with like 50-50 private equity advising, where I'd be like, I was a person who knew people and then I could assess businesses and sort of put together growth plans pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And so it'd be like, oh, well, we want to invest in this. What do you think about that? And like, go meet with a management team, like do some research, whatever.
It's pretty sick.
It was interesting. I mean, it's fun because it's like you have money to spend to like help, like, you know, hopefully like interesting things succeed, which is something I was interested in.
Right.
And I learned a lot about private equity, which was really good. And then the other 50%, or I guess like the other 50 was like, I creative directed Justin Timberlake's last tour for the Man of the Woods album, which was also interesting. And like, I learned a lot about, well, I mean, it's just like, I liked, like, again, like all this, like all of the DVD commentaries finally like paid off, right? Where it's like, they like one of his managers had seen some of the Nike work. They really liked it. And they're like, oh, will you pitch Justin? And I was like, yeah, sure. Here's what I think should happen. Probably a quarter of it went through. You know what I mean? It's like, this was in 2017. I pitched like, I was like, I just gone to Japan with Chang and Netflix because they were shooting the first season of Ugly Delicious, and I'd met I forget the director's name, but he had done 20 Feet from Stardom, and he was doing this thing with Chang, and so I was like, fuck, we should do a Justin documentary. And I was like, I pitched like a 10-episode arc where it was like the first shot is you losing at Star Search. It's like 1.5 minutes of uncomfortable use, like 8-year-old you singing and losing on Star Search. And then like episode 2 is like NSYNC, episode 4 is Britney, episode 8 is Janet, whatever. It's like, I was like, oh, this could be really interesting. And then it ended up not coming to fruition, but I was like, sure, that's the kind of stuff I was interested in making. It's like, oh, like we did something for his album that no one remembers, but at the time was like fun to do, where it's like, okay, for every song on the album, we'll do some sort of product for it, right? This is in 2018, so it's like still a time when that's like interesting. And so we did a Jordan for one song. We did like we did a cooler with Yeti and like all orange, which was the color of his album. We did like
do you still have the cooler?
Yeah, I have everything. I have a massive storage unit just filled with stuff.
Yeti is the most genius branded company ever. I hate and love that brand so much. I love him.
At the time, he was such a cheat code where you could do anything. And so we were like, okay, let's just like, we did like a custom Patagonia blanket. Like there was one thing where it's like, oh, we did a shirt with Levi's because he had a song called Flannel, where it was like, okay, so we pulled archival fabrics from the year of his wife's birth, 82. And then using that fabric, we did a shirt in it's I don't know, it's like fun to make shit,
Okay.
And so
quick question. While you're doing this, I think there was a significantly large leap from being a guy who was just around people that had good ideas, supporting and building them, to all of a sudden, now you're communicating in ways that like I want to do this documentary. I want to do this. Like, what is the change that happens that gives you the ability to feel that you have the right to even do those things? And I say that as I think for many people, like when this conversation first started, to tie this together, you're like, no,
it's the same thing.
We're not that different. And I'm like, actually, yes. So somehow an illusion that I believe
it's the exact same thing. Your illusion is just wrong. It's like your worldview is wrong.
That's
the only thing
that's
wrong.
I love
it's like because the only thing that matters is like, is the idea good or bad, right? Like, are you actually bringing an interesting idea to the table or not?
Right.
And that's a subjective thing.
Yeah.
Like, so many ideas, like me or you or whoever pitches, are bad.
Okay.
But you might as well just like talk them out. It's like, see how far they get, see if they're interesting enough, see if they make sense.
So you get this level of confidence then, because I think that the big difference.
But I think that comes from College Humor though. That comes from, oh, we can make anything. Oh, you can just make a e-commerce backend to sell t-shirts. It's like, that makes no sense. Like, as an as a 40-year-old now, I'm like looking at that. It's like, why would a 22-year-old ever do that? That makes no sense. But like at the time, you're just like, all you have to do is solve the problem. How do you solve the problem of, we need to sell t-shirts, we need to track them, we need to create an affiliate program, which didn't exist at the time. It's like, you just have to figure out all the different ways to just do anything. It's like, Postcard is that, right? Like, Postcard is ultimately an idea of me saying, I'm tired of me having to do like all of this data parsing to figure out where I want to go when I'm going to Mexico City, and like aggregating 6 lists and like making a spreadsheet that's like an x-axis of like people who recommended it, and y-axis of places, and being like, okay, this is recommended the most. This is what Jason said to do, so I care more about that. Or this is what this person said to do, so I care more about that. It's like, I'm like, no. A machine should do that. It's like taking advantage of technology. So when it comes to like the Justin stuff, it's like, yes, on some level, there's like an ego that needs to be in place to be like, hey, what about this? But if you have the right mindset of like, you're not saying this is the only way to do it. You're saying, what about this idea?
Okay.
It's
I
like,
agree.
There's no version of me. I mean, like, obviously I'm like psycho and I'm like hyper competitive. So I'm like, this is the best idea because I'm putting real thought into it. But it's like, it's not to say I'm like, this is always a guarantee. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm very like, the poor kid in me is very much like, the only guarantees are things that you have backup plans are, right? It's like, there's
what? Do you wrestle with that often? Because that's
no,
always
I don't wrestle with it. It's the number one anxiety I have in my life. There's no wrestling. It won. I'm pinned. So you know what I mean? It's all 3 counts or whatever went off. It's like I didn't kick out of it. I lost.
But it sounds like, and I don't know any of this stuff, that you've gotten to experience some financial success from your position in these companies, and it sounds like they were acquired, grown, whatever.
Yeah.
So when do you still feel like the poor person, or do you still wrestle with that despite whatever level of monetary success?
I have a spreadsheet on my computer that is a product of a spreadsheet I started when I was 22.
Oh my God.
In which the premise of how much money I could spend per day was $40. I could spend $40 a day on the salary that I had based on whatever to have any sort of living. I fill that spreadsheet out every day of how I've spent
Still,
my money.
now.
100%. Just because it's like good to know, like sometimes, like, and then there's a month long recap that happens where it says, okay, like there's daily costs, which is like food and shit.
Okay.
But then there's like one-offs where it's like I'm buying something.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but it's good to fucking force yourself to put into a spreadsheet, oh, I spent this on that. And then to look at on a monthly basis, like, oh, that trip cost that much money? Or, oh, this is how much that cost. It's like, it's good for you to go through that exercise. Every single percent of myself is defined by being poor.
Oh, man.
Nothing has defined me more. You know, two things, being Asian American in Tennessee and being poor are the those are the most defining characteristics of myself.
But now you haven't been, I mean, obviously you're still Asian American, but like you haven't been poor in, I'm assuming, a very long time.
Poor doesn't leave your mindset ever.
Well, I don't know. I agree with you.
It never left my mindset.
I mean, I am rich. I'm air quoting that word in the sense that I have food, shelter. I'm not concerned about.
You have a watch polishing cloth on your fucking desk. It's like, yeah,
well, no.
Shit's gone all right. We've all seen the Daytona, my man.
No, I mean, I'm saying
you're about to go on a great trip to Tokyo. We all get it.
No, well, and the thing is, but like this is the thing that I feel is I don't have say the Bob Iger thing. Let's call that out again. Bob Iger has this education, this accomplishment, this, et cetera, right? And he also has all this financial security. I have the financial security in that I'm coffee rich. I can basically buy a coffee every day and not really budget for it. Everything else is fucking laser line item budgeted. I'm moving this to get this. I'm doing this. And that's fine. But I think the thing that I wrestle with the most, and you know, this I still want to talk about Postcard because I think all this stuff kind of connects. The thing I wrestle with the most is the fact that I'm like, oh no, what if tomorrow no one cares about the pod or any of these other things, and now I have 2 kids, a mortgage, you know, and what do I do if I can't make a living? And so with that, there's this scary fear mentality that drives me into levels of insanity I didn't know that existed, into which I'm like, oh my God. And so like for you, are you like, well, shit, if this doesn't work, do I not have this? Or if this, the
kids are a hard part, I think, because I don't know what that's like. But I remember like I have like employees and I have people who work for me who like have left jobs to work with. Like I remember the first time when we were doing the all, like Bulk had a kid who I think was like 6 at the time or something. Mm-hmm. And I remember being like I remember I was at this is crazy how I remember this, but I was at a party at the IAC building and they were doing some sort of digital projection against the windows. And I remember having like somewhat of a mental breakdown because I was like, fuck, if I don't figure out how to make this make money, like Bulk's kid's not going to have food. And like that really fucked with me. And I think now, I think of it more like I don't have the dependence, which I think would be a different level of stress, anxiety, and things like that. But just for myself, I mean, I'm kind of like, I think I just don't make decisions that I think are irresponsible because I was poor. You know what I mean? It's
okay,
like,
that's fair.
You can always like, I also like, I think I like nice things, but I don't think I spend money dumbly, you know, in a dumb way. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not like, oh, here's just this thing to buy this thing. You know what I mean? I don't have a Nautilus. You know, it's like, I don't like, there are things that I'm like, oh, this is watch. Cool. They're fine. My watches are fine. It's like I have like a good old Cartier tank that I bought from Cartier.
Hey,
you know what I mean? It's like
you got Rick Owens blistered lamb. You got
but like on Essence on sale in like 2014.
Sure. I have an asterisk
It's like,
on anything nice that someone thinks I have.
Oh yeah. I mean, I bought something nice for someone the other day, and this is how I knew we were on the same page. They were like, oh yeah, this is the first time I've had something nice that's not from the real. You know what I mean? Which is like, that's the OG Essence sale at 2012. But like every Tom Brown dress shirt I have, or like not everyone, but like 90% are from Barney's Warehouse Co-op, the website, when they used to throw everything up, dress shirts for like $85 and stuff like that. Because like I had a heavy Tom phase, and I was like just like everything, like I'd find the cheapest. It's like, yeah. I mean, listen, 2011 Tom hit different. You know what I mean? It's like it was. You never knew what the sizing was going to be.
Oh my
it's
God.
Like you had to like try everything. Like I have like 2 varsity jackets. One's a 4, one's a 2. They both fit the exact same.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and it's like, it was way pre Xenia, it's like before 4 bars was on everything. Mm-hmm. Like there's that one, I guess this is really blammo talk here. It's like, there's that one like work shirt that Kanye wore at one point where he like tore the sleeves off. It was a red plaid shirt, and it has like a straight bottom rather than the normal dress shirt bottom. And then it has the grosgrain on the side, like side section. It's like I have that in the navy blue corduroy. I like was looking for the red plaid version of it for so long and could never find it. Like sometimes like on a dark night on the real, I'll like be like red plaid Tom Brown and like search through everything that's active, and it's just like I don't know. It's like a different time.
You know,
what the fuck were we talking about?
No, I still have the train in my head. Tom, here's a fun fact: never ever wanted to sell anything other than white shirts, gray suits, and black
of course
shoes.
he didn't. He was a psycho.
And so
he is a psycho.
And so,
do you remember the first AD about Tom's house where he had a single bed? He had like
a twin bed.
He had a twin bed and like the roof, like penthouse of some Tribeca apartment. And I remember seeing
it was like 505 Greenwich or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or one Christopher Street was where he was living, I think. Yeah,
it was such a specific like. It's like before minimalism was cool, before like everyone knew what Donald Judd was, who Donald Judd was. It was just like, yeah, this is fucking it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's like I'm still so informed by that in such a real way, where it's just like those like there's so many images. Like I was going through my Tumblr,
oh man,
for something, and I was just like scrolling back through. I was like, damn, subcultures used to exist in a real way.
Yeah.
Whereas like minimalism was a subculture.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, this is just what you were into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it was like Marfa pre-Prada store, or not pre-Prada store, but pre-Beyonce at the Prada store. You know what I mean? Kind of things where it's just like, damn, this shit used to be real. But then when you still get into it, it's like fun. That honestly, again, full circle is why Blammo I think is interesting, because it's like people who are earnest nerds about shit that like I am, like that is the number one thing that I love, is like when you can like really just be like, I can just like throw a gajillion things at you. And that's our shorthand sometimes is crazier. It's like, oh yeah, this. And you're like, I know exactly what you're talking about, even though you said gibberish to me, you know?
Yeah, my daughter wears a, correct my pronunciation, please, if I say this wrong. But my daughter wears a Chinati. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Chinati.
Okay, she wears a Chinati shirt that my friend went and got for her when he was at the foundation, the Donald Judd Foundation in Marfa. Yeah. And she wears it all the time. And every time I see it, I always want to tell her, like, hey, Harriet, that shirt is so rare. And today she was wearing it because it's super hot here. And she comes out, I was like, Harriet, you're wearing your Chinati shirt. And she goes, yes, Dad, I know. And Donald Judd lives in Springfield, or, lived in Missouri. And she's like, my 6-year-old is basically telling me all about, Donald Judd and the Chinati Foundation and all this. And I'm just like, oh man. I'm like,
it's like one of the good things about information being everywhere. It's like also bad, but it's like one of the good things. Like I didn't know who Donald Judd was when I was 6. You know what I mean? It's like, I had to learn the fucking hard way. Yeah, I did. But it's like, do you remember how hard it was to like learn about things? Like, remember, like you would like get VHS tapes from people to like see, like hear and learn about things.
Oh,
it's
I would.
Like
yeah.
such a crazy.
I would.
It's
have
like
tape
wild.
Club, and we would.
Bro, I was on MIRC. Like I was just like in some, like, because I'm like at my core like a massive nerd. You know what I mean? So it's like but that was the only way you could learn things. Like I remember like learning how to like turn like movie files into real player files, because I was like, okay, well these things have to exist somewhere, and like,
That's true. Do you think information is less precious because of the ease to acquire it?
I mean, I don't think it's that simple. I think it's like the way you synthesize information is more important than the access to information now. It's like, how are you processing it? I think is like, it's like you and I have talked about this a lot in private, of like, my biggest challenge is how do I divorce what I care about from what other people will think about what I care about. So it's like, I remember it's like, this is again, the safest space to say this. I was like a big Corbusier genre person for 20 years.
Okay.
And then when the Kardashians started like, genreing it up, I was just like, fuck, do I still like this? And I was like, of course I still like this, because I think it's sick as fuck that Corbu, Genre, and Periand all went to fucking Chandigarh, India to redo an entire city. It's like, that is fucking tight. You know what I mean? To see a person be like, okay, this is how a city should be designed. Here's how the seats in the library versus the seats in the courtroom, and like all these things, taking advantage of like resources that exist there. It's like, that is fucking cool. And that is like, it's cool that like at one point they were like, okay, we're going to create a new system of how things are measured based on the size of the average man. It's like, that kind of shit is cool, no matter if, every fashion influencer or whatever has a, cane genre easy chair in their home. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, those things aren't actually related because it wasn't made with those intentions. So it's like, you can still fuck with it. And I just have to remember to do that.
So you get excited by city planning the most.
I mean, I get excited about seeing like someone creative doing exactly what they want to do. And like I think editing is good. I think it's like I think good producers are really valuable in like sort of like working with a creative person to get the outcome that they want.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
like I think like seeing like a true complete creative vision is always really, really interesting to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's like what made, I mean, honestly, when Kanye wasn't like a psycho, it's like that's what made him great. He's like, no, this is exactly what I want this to be. And I think it's like when you see people being able to do that and also make things that are accessible and that want to be like that people that resonates with people in such a real way, I think that's really interesting. It's like, you know, it's like the influence like Donald Judd within like everything is like so fucking profound.
I agree.
You know, it's like, and so to me, it's like, you know, I think it's like, it actually should be really cool that, you know, the cousin of Corbusier, who was an afterthought by most people, was able to make a chair that now sells for, you know, maybe $12,000 and is in Kardashian's home, like considering, you know, it's like he made this thing in India and he never made it for fucking Instagram likes or whatever. He just made like a fucking beautiful chair that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And like, that's cool.
Do you have one of those?
I mean,
he's shaking his head, looking down.
I've worked very hard.
Yeah.
You know,
hey man,
and,
good for you. You should.
And I don't have kids, so it's like, you know,
I have
like,
I have a Bertoya chair. I have a bunch of them that I've gotten like around because people just didn't like them. But I would say I probably spent maybe 20, 30 plus hours cleaning them all with a toothbrush.
Oh, I mean, I got so into it at a point where someone was like, yeah, you can't have one that was restored at all. Everything has to be original materials. No, like caning is the only thing that they're allowed to sort of like be refurbished, but like all of the original wood pieces. And it's kind of like, I'm now sort of at a point where I'm like, well, does it matter? But the purist in me is like very much like, there's a soul to this wood, and it's like the same thing that like he oversaw and all that stuff. And it's kind of like should I just be buying these on Dynamo for like fucking $200 or something? Like whatever is like it's using the same materials from India. It's like, I don't know. It's very confusing. It's something I have to reckon with a lot. But
well,
yeah.
Okay. So Postcard.
Okay, so
explain this. Explain me Postcard, because I think it's a genius idea, especially as a person who's goes on trips and collects lists and lives in group chats.
I think the idea itself isn't that original, to be honest. I think the idea of being like, oh, we need a better way to organize things and have information be parsed, I don't think is that novel, because a lot of people have tried to do this. Sure. So I'm like, I recognize that completely. I think we're fortunately at a time where technology is at a place where we can really take advantage of it, where it's like, to me, it was like what I said before. It's like, I was so tired of having to do manual labor to like figure out what I wanted. Like when it came to places where I went, like where I would go to lunch as much as where I would go, you know, on vacation or any of those things. Or I'm like, you know, I was touring with Justin at the time, and like, we'd be like, oh, we're in Paris. I'd be like, where should we go eat? And so I'd like hit up 10 different people. I'd be like, oh, what are your favorite places in Paris right now? I would have to then go and like, again, make a spreadsheet, like figure out what's the most recommended. Who do I trust the most? Like all that stuff. Open up 15 tabs because I'm opening up Eater, Infatuation, Condé Nast Traveler, you know, random people on social media, like Wareheim, whatever. Like, right. I'm like going through and doing all that stuff. And I'm like parsing that information. I'm like, this is fucking stupid that I am doing this by hand. And so I think, you know, we started as a way for people to share lists, and that was the original germ of the idea. Mm-hmm. And then we sort of like layered in a bunch of technology on top of it, where, you know, then it became like, I was like doing all these like biz dev deals where I was like, okay, well, Condé Nast, can we have access to your content? Vox, can we have access to your content? And like all this stuff, because I was like, I like Netflix, you know, HBO Max, whatever. I was doing all these deals, and I was like, oh fuck, like we can actually aggregate all of this information online because so much of it exists out there already. And then we can kind of use, you know, machine learning and, you know, natural language processing to essentially fractionalize that information and then reassemble it as a massive data set, right? So it's like,
that's heavy shit, actually.
Well, but the idea of being like, okay, well, one person says this, another person says that, and then you sort of like break that apart into its component parts and then reassemble it as a schema about a place. So then once you've done that, you can then apply all these different consumer uses on top of it. So it's like, you know, everything from like make a list of like places you want to share with someone and like, you know, all of that stuff. But then it gets more freaky where it's like, okay, well, I also want, if someone's looking for a place for a family to eat pasta in Italy, in Rome, specifically in this budget, it's like now I can reassemble that. I can access that information through all the different vectors that I've already broken it down into. And then you start solving like really specific problems, right? For me, it's like a really good product is something that, because there's so many things that can do almost anything if you hack your way into it. I was like, well, how do we more specifically solve really intentional problems that affect you or me or people? Honestly, like the blammo audience of it all, right? So it's like for me, it's like I would see so many people posting, oh, I'm going to this place, like where should I check out, as like a thing on Instagram stories, right? Mm-hmm. So then we just use the data set to essentially allow someone to ask that question. It spits up a form. A viewer of that question can go in and answer all the thing, answer like, here are my favorite places. Here's what I like about them. And then the backend will show it to the person who asked the question by, here's the most recommended places. Here's who recommended what. Here's all of them on a map. Here's, you can see pictures from all those places. Here's what these other places said about that thing. So now you can actually have, as a person's answering that question, instead of going through like Instagram responses and again, trying to parse it yourself, we're like making it a lot easier for you.
Right.
Like, which is like, to me, it's like, the best version of technology is something that makes your life easier. Like, I think like information organization is something that feels like weirdly so behind to me based on what we're able to do, where it's like, why is it that like, if you walked into my office and there were like magazines all over the floor opened up to a certain page and like pages torn out of books, like taped to a wall or whatever. It's like, why is that what our phones are? You know what I mean? It's like, for me, it's like, our phones we just need to use this data better. So it's like, I would be like saving things on Instagram because I saw a place that a friend of mine in Korea went to, and I'd be like, oh, I have to remember that for the next time I go to Korea. And then I just forget. It goes into like an ether of nothingness. And so I was like, why don't we just make it so you can share sheet it in? The machine learning will be able to identify this is what this place was, organize it by city and country, and then embed that content into the thing. And it's like, that's how I need to keep track of the places I want to go to. Like, it works for shopping. It works for food. It works for, like, I have it for like hotels that I'm just like interested in around the world, where I'm just like, oh, these are just places that I see on random TikToks. So I'm like, I'm not planning to go to, this place in Mexico, or there was a McDonald's in Porto, Portugal that is like the most beautiful McDonald's, like stained glass. It's like, okay, I'm not planning on going to Portugal anytime soon. The next time I'm there, I want the app to hit me and text me and be like, oh, remember this place that you saved in Porto? It's like, that's the way I want my phone to work. I want to be more predictive. So for us, it's like, Postcard ultimately will be a personalized recommendation platform when it comes to places. So it's like, the consumer tools are organize, share, and discover. But like, for me, it's like also like really predicated in the fact that I don't think that we're at a place now where top tens really work anymore, or like a ranking of things really work. Because it's like, even though you and I are very similar, our number one or top 10 places that we want to go to in New York are going to be dramatically different, because we have all kinds of different preferences. Or not even dramatically different. Maybe they're 70% similar, but there are 30% that are different. It's like, there should be ways for, our experience to be more tailored to us. It's like crazy to me when I look at like, someone's like Pete Wells put out a list of like
the
top 100 restaurants. Yeah. And I'm like, cool. It's like something I'm taking into consideration, but it's like, that's not my list. You know what I mean? And it's like, he's someone who's probably catering to someone like me, but it still doesn't work. Even like my closest friends, it's like, I want to see all the information, and I want to like, just, pick the things that make the most sense for me.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the top 100 thing, because I used to love like numbered lists, and now I'm like, well, it's like, I don't know if I'm more introspective or just getting older, but like, sometimes I'll be like, well, I don't really want that level tonight. Like, that may be the greatest restaurant in New York, but I don't want to do all these other things to experience that. Like, I kind of just want something like this. And I want to be able to still compartmentalize those different types of lists and different experiences for when I have them, where it's like, okay, it's later at night, I'm down here, and I want something easy, and I actually don't even want to be in the restaurant. Like, I just want to get something on my way home. I think like being able to understand that better is always, more helpful, I guess.
Well, I think it's like always crazy when people are like, what's your favorites? Like, what's your favorite movie? And I'm like, well, it really depends on my mood. And that's how I feel about restaurants. That's how I feel about almost everything. It's like who I am at that moment dictates so much of what I want.
Sure.
And I think there's that, but I also think the other thing to what you're saying is like, I think we also now have been passively conditioned to expect things to be more algorithmically determined for us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so much of our experiences are now guided by an invisible hand that has allowed us to avoid things that we actively don't like.
Right.
Where it's like, it's like so much of everything, like even like things that we don't realize are like somewhat tailored to us, are like being tailored to us in some capacity. And so when someone tries to brute force in and say, this is the best thing, you're like, well, it's not, because I'm used to like, this is my expectation for how good something should be.
Yeah.
And so like how good this recommendation should be. So I think that to me is kind of an interesting thing. Like right now, like we're in the beginning steps of like developing the recommendation algorithm, but ahead of that, essentially the way we sort of like bypassed all of the algorithm stuff is essentially like, all right, let's just target it for a specific person. It's a person who, it's like if Yelp sort of over indexes on people who are price sensitive more than myself or you or whoever, TripAdvisor over indexes on business travelers. There's like little things that kind of like make this not for us. And so like, okay, let's at the very least like start with content sources that inform the data set, where it's like, okay, we know that you care about, to a lesser extent, Michelin, these types of content creators, these type of brands, like chefs from these restaurants. Like we sort of did like bypassed personalization by way of like sort of like curation. You know what I mean? And so then as we like over the next like 6 months, like is going to be big algo developing, hopefully not in a evil way, but in a way that makes people's lives better is the general premise.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty amazing. Like because I've been using Instagram in the past. Because basically a lot of this stuff started when I used to use, do you remember the app Foursquare?
Of course.
Okay.
Our first office admin at College Humor ended up marrying Dennis Crowley, who started Foursquare.
Yeah.
We're all like in the same like neighborhood.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Literally.
We had Foursquare, I used Foursquare a ton, and I loved it because at the time when I was at Beggars, I would go back and forth between here and London, and I would just make my hit list, and then I would walk around, and then I would get a little notification and be like, hey, you're near wherever. Like, you should go and check this out. And it was
Dishoom.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, I was like, oh man, this is so cool. And then, fine, it went away. And then I used Google Maps, and Google Maps was cool. And then I was like, no, this isn't working. Then I used Yelp. Yelp didn't work. Then I basically like gone through all these different stuff, and I eventually just started writing things down. But then I lost my notebook. And
you're writing things down on paper?
Yeah.
That's psycho.
I know. I was writing things down.
In 2020, it's psycho to do that.
Well, now it's funny because like I don't use Google Maps. I'm not like above it, but I was just using Apple Maps. And then I was making my own little lists and stuff. And then in preparation for Japan, I have tons of all these recs from folks. And everyone's like, oh, you need to use Google Maps because Google Maps is much better in Japan. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I made a Google Maps thing for Japan. And I'm like, but I never use it. And I was like, oh, I forgot. It's not even installed on my phone anymore. And so there's just like all these.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like anti-Google. Like I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't have apps.
I think
for
me, like the Google Maps of it all was kind of like Google is forced to be work for as much us as a teenager in India, as much as a grandmother in Saskatchewan, and like inevitably like that, like trying to make something that works for all of those people as well as it can is a hard thing to solve for. And so like I think if we do our job correctly, then hopefully like a year from now we won't be having that conversation. It's like hopefully it's like, oh, it's all in one place, and it's like easy for me to like use, and hopefully we're solving enough like specific problems as we can. But like, yeah, I mean, I was like you, where I was like, I have an Evernote folder right now.
Evernote.
That's just like that's probably the most out of date product I use, but it's like syncs between my phone and my laptop perfectly.
You're
and
stuck.
It's like I can just like I use it for everything from like my personal journaling to like my to-do list to these like lists that I'd be like, okay, Evernote writes in I think at the time it was writing in like some version of a formatting text where no matter where I pasted it would be clean. And so I was like, okay, I can, this is like a place where I can write all these things. Like it was like advanced text edit, frankly. And I was like, here is a thing that allows me to, have all these lists. I can copy and paste into text. I can copy and paste into email. It's like every single time it's like the way I want it to look. And then we made this. So now I never use it. But like we wanted to make it so it's like, one of the things like we had to do is we had to build a really good Google Maps importer so that anyone who loves Google Maps could very easily like migrate all their stuff over to Postcard. And that I think is coming out in like 2 weeks. But
that's like a genius idea. Cause I basically spent maybe the past 2.5-3 months migrating myself off of Spotify back to Apple Music because
wow, why? What happened?
Because the truth is I pay for both. I still pay for Spotify, but I was just tired.
Why do you pay for both?
I don't know. I mean,
it's a bad poor person move.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, I mean, I have it and I was like, well, I mean, Elizabeth still loves Spotify and my mom uses Spotify and then a couple other people use Spotify as a family plan. So I'm like, well, I want to pay for my.
Why did you want to use Apple Music? What was the difference for you?
Because I wanted lossless, and then I wanted. I also started to understand the Atmos mixes better, and I think like some albums in Atmos really do sound good.
Yeah, if they've gone back and actually like mastered it for Atmos, I agree.
Yeah, and so now I'm like, because I have a little DAC that I'll use for certain albums that I want to listen to lossless. Because for a while I was like, okay, I had Tidal and then I had Spotify. And then I was like, I'm just going to use that.
Tidal lossless is sneaky really good.
It is good. because it has MQA, which people...
It's really good. But like, I'm almost never listening to it on headphones or speakers at this point that will make the difference. Like, I don't hear it as much in my like Apple... Like we're talking right now, I'm using like AirPod Pros, and like, you don't hear it in that. Like, no. I'm not wearing like cans on my head.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's such a, but like, basically my friend was like, oh, you should use this importer. It'll import all your Spotify stuff over to Apple Music. It was cool until what it did is it just chooses whatever song. So like, say I like, I don't know.
Oh, the versions are, this is where I'm honestly like, this is what we had to experience where, you know, we've been working on this for like a 2.5 years now, maybe 3 years. And so like early on, like our place matching was just like kind of like really, they call it, it's like powered by BERT, which is like the original version of like machine learning. And then, you know, in like 2022 August, I remember it was like near my birthday. And one of the engineers, like our head of data was like, my friends work at this company. It's called OpenAI. They have this thing called GPT. It's insane. You're going to love it. And so then we ran it through that. And then all of our like place matching went from being like 55% to like 99%.
Oh, there you go.
That is where like, if the person who, the nerd who built your like importer thing, if they just added a GPT layer to it, which would be a little bit more expensive, probably not that much for what you're doing, it would actually be a really great matching product.
Yeah.
And like,
I was so
send
mad.
that note to the person.
Because I was like, what the fuck? I was like, I don't want this version from the Empire Records soundtrack. I want the version from the album. And it's like, why do I have, 10 different singles instead of the entire album? And
well, I'm
all
sure
these things?
Also there's like quality issues too. It's not pulling for you the highest, like whatever bitrate or whatever the format is that the DSP has it in as well.
It screwed everything up, and it made me so pissed. I just deleted my Apple Music. I deleted everything that was on my Apple Music, every single thing. Command A, deleted it all, and now I'm slowly rebuilding it. And now I'm like,
we've become such monsters. Like the expectations we have for products. It's like, because I'm one of the things that like I don't know where I don't. At some point, it entered my brain because I would hear people talking so much shit. I remember like I would instill in every person and team that I worked with. I'd always be like, okay, we have to judge this the way you would judge something made by the person you hate the most. Because it's like, we give ourselves a lot of fucking like leeway, because we're always like, well, here's why this is like this, and here's why this is like this.
Yeah.
Like, no one else gives you that. Because like, we both like the different things we're talking about. We're like, but yeah, that like, it couldn't match this thing. It made me so mad. I wanted to delete the product. Like you're talking about Google Maps and you're like, I don't want to, I'm so angry at the way this works that I don't want it on my thing at all. And I think we have such high expectations where it's like, that's the thing that scares me the most about like making Postcard. It's like, I have such high expectations for what it can do. Like if it doesn't do the thing I want it to, it's like, it stresses me out so much.
But I do think, and I don't even know if this is true or not, if you guys have it on there, but like, I think that there is way more grace and leniency from people who are asked. Like if you ask for it, I think you get it. Like there's so many things that I've used in the past where it's like, hey, this is super early on. This and this and this may not work, but here's all these things that, like, I used to beta test a bunch of dumb stuff like way back in the day, and I loved it.
I added a screen at the end of onboarding that said beta because of that specific thing. And like I've put in all of these different like reminders to let people know this is early. And like when it comes to product design, we're like the version that we put out like a couple of weeks ago, which is kind of like our true like letting not randoms but more randoms like actually use the native product. Like that version of it, I had to like keep dropping breadcrumbs to say, here's what's gonna come, here's what the eventual product will be, but here's where we're starting. And so you'd have to figure out like, what is the version 0.1 of it before the 1.0 is even done.
Yeah.
To say like, this is the idea of what we're trying to do. So like bear with us, and then like hopefully like it'll be enough for you to see the vision of the entire thing. But no, I mean, this shit is like, it's been fucking hard, but hopefully it'll pay off and it'll be fun and it'll be good and you'll like it. And I'll send you a version for you to use in Tokyo, and then I'll figure out a way to get all your Google Maps stuff onto it so you can have it there.
Well, the funny thing is that the only stuff I have is Google Maps. Everything else I'd made into Apple Maps.
Yeah. Well, we'll figure out a way to move it over.
Well, yeah, it's.
I'm converting people one person at a time. I'm white glove onboarding people.
I will
one
say,
at a time just so we can get it working.
I definitely want it, even just selfishly for the Blamo Slack. So like, I'll say this: like the Slack, we have a what is it? Like it's a free account, right? And so it deletes itself or expunges, whatever you want to say, after a certain amount of time. And a lot of times, like there is for safety, security reasons, I won't read all this stuff on here, but people will be like, hey, what is the list? Or I'm going to X place at X time, where should I go? and people be like, oh, go here. But like, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, hey, I'm in New York for 3 days. Where would you go from here? Or hey,
what
I'm
is
in
the
here.
official Blammo list for blank, blank, blank?
Yeah, and at one
for sure.
point, a person messaged me and was like, hey, you should do this and make it and sell it because I used to do this for Super Future. And I wanted to be like, hey, just so you know, I was one of the people that bought that stuff for Super Future. And I remember getting the thing and half the restaurants were closed. It was like, do you remember NFT? Or no, it wasn't NFT. It was,
no.
Yeah, it was NFT, not for tourists. It was the NFT guide in New York.
Yes. Well, to me, the thing with so we're adding this thing because we're working with a bunch, like a big part of the premise of the idea is like, the premise of the idea. A big part of it is the idea that creators, I think, have changed in what they mean to people now.
Yeah.
And so you kind of need to have a way where someone can like essentially wall the things they want to share with everyone versus the things they want to share with their community.
Oh, I gatekeep.
So we're adding this. Yeah. So we're adding this layer where essentially like if someone subscribed to Blammo, you can pass us all of those email addresses and all the contact information, and only those people will be able to access that content.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
Like you could, and so like for us, it's like, you know, it's as much for a Discord or a Slack as much as it is for a Substack creator who's like, no, my entire livelihood is the subscription offering that I'm giving to the people who pay me $50 a year or whatever.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, how do you allow them to incentivize to use the product? Because now they're incentivized to actually be a part of it because it allows them to make money. Right. Because that creator class is like it's become such an important resource. It's like, you know, I'm like working with the woman who does like Dumois, and like she does like, you know, she has like her list of like famous favorite places, or, you know, every place in New York that a celebrity's been to, like tagged by like famous people and shit like that. It's crazy.
Oh my God, that's actually really genius.
So like a Timothy Chalamet fan can go to like Timothy Chalamet's favorite places, hopefully not to stalk them, but more to have that experience or whatever.
Yeah. You'll probably want to have a very strict line item. If you see this person, do not engage.
Well, the one thing I will say is like, I'm very like, we're early enough where I can just kind of be like, I don't want any bad shit happening here at all. So someone was like, you know, like we're going to work with like the DNC to like identify polling places and like have that like on lists and things like that. I was like, I'm not fucking doing that. I'm not doing that shit for the GOP. Like fuck all that noise. It's like, oh, you want to do a Proud Boys meeting like list? It's like, I'll just delete that shit, bro. I don't fucking care.
They're gonna be like, no, but it's my right. And it's like, no, let me.
Yeah, it's literally not.
Let me explain.
I own this.
Let me explain
how private companies work in this way, where unfortunately I hate you, and that's not we don't get to, you know, whatever. Yeah. And also you're a literal Nazi, so I think I'm valid. That feels like a good place to stop.
It does. I think we got it for sure. David, thank you so much coming on. It was a pleasure. Congrats on Postcard, and thanks again, man. It was good chatting. I'll see you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Blammo. Our show is produced by Blammo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super ultra important, if I had a air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon, because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene DeLeon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blammo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed, and more to come. So we will see you all soon.